Hey, oh, yo, how is it going, everybody?
It's good. I didn't know if with the whole data gods, the Greek legends thing, I need to like start with Euro or Oprah or something like that.
We need
So
some
you need
glasses
some
that
sort
we
of
hand out to people to smash. That's what I'm hearing. Or plates. We need something.
There you go.
good.
Breaking glass. I like my lion roar, but I don't know if everyone's up for a roar though.
Yeah, don't say we did.
Yeah, there we go. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, man?
I am doing great. I'm back from Vegas. We had a great conference. I know saw you there, and we saw plenty of people there, and just the energy and enthusiasm was kind of off the charts. So it's great. It's great to be back and at home in the office now, and starting up a new week here.
Well, that's fantastic. Christina, you've been on the road a lot too. How are you doing? It's been a little bit.
Good. I'm glad to be home. I will not lie to you. It is very nice to make dinner in the evening and just enjoy
Oh, that's
some time.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to meet a lot of people over the last couple of weeks at FabCon and SQLBits and MVP Summit and DataTune. I mean, it seems like it's been a breakneck experience of insights and uh, all sorts of new stuff come out. So it's super exciting things. We're not going to talk much about FabCon today because we're here to talk Dataverses. But Scott, if you had one thing that you were super excited about from FabCon, what would that be? Not to put you on the
Getting some
spot here.
sleep. No, no, actually,
Getting some sleep.
I think just the general excitement and the enthusiasm from customers and partners that I spoke to, just kind of on this rocket ship that's feels like that's taking off, and it's good to be with people. And it was funny, we did a session, as I see Jack in the comments here. Jack, we did a session on one Monday, a workshop, and in the session, the guy that I report to, one of my coworkers that I work with pretty regularly, a couple other folks were there. Of that group, only one person had I actually met person to person before. Out of about 6 people that were either leading or working in the session, and it was just good to be able to see people and catch up and human to human kind of thing. It was good.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna say, and well, I like that a lot. If I was stick to the technology wise, I'm super excited about task flows. To me, that speaks to like getting to the solution and making sure we're designing and building the right things and people are following the patterns you want to do. So, and you can understand what the heck it is you're looking at with the task flow. So, I'm excited about that side of the house too. So,
folders, of course.
Oh yeah, folders. Christina, how about you? Anything excited that you saw?
Oh my gosh. No, task flows was my number one for sure. It's something that people ask for all the time, and we just have to make up on the fly, with like metadata or whatever we can find. So having something built and established that you can click through all of your different things in, that's, I mean, for sure got me excited when I saw it. I was like, no way. So that, and I'm a sucker for Git. So anytime I can see things being more integrated with Git repos and more ways for people to recover when things go poorly, the better. So
Awesome. But Scott, I'm not sure everyone. I mean, we know who you are. We love, love us some Scott Sewell action here. But Scott, you want to introduce yourself to the to the audience?
Sure. So I am Scott Sewell. I'm a principal program manager on the Power BI / Fabric CAT team, which CAT team is kind of redundant because it stands for, we could call it the customer cat team and be double redundant. But it's really that team that focuses on trying to drive the connection between engineering and product management and our end customers, and find alignment and making sure that our products are growing and the feedback is being heard. So that's the team that I work for. Been on the team for about, I guess, 4 years now. But my focus area, unlike the rest of my cat brethren or friends there, is focused on the Dynamics and Dataverse Power Platform, and how those products and customers using those products can take advantage of Fabric and Power BI to really open up the value of the tools that they have, the investment they've made, both in terms of product and also the time and resources they've poured into building their F&O or their CRM or Power Apps applications. They've put a ton of resources and time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears into building up that data set. And really, Power BI, I believe, and then by extension Fabric now, is the best way to show off the value of the data you have. And so my focus for the last several years has all been on that Dataverse connection and the Dataverse side of it. And in fact, kind of near and dear to my heart, because I started implementing Dataverse, or what became Dataverse, in 2003.
Wow.
So 21 years ago. I was about 6 years old. No, but I started at that point on this. It was called CRM 1.0 at that point, and I kept finding that, hey, this is really an incredible tool that can be adapted and expanded to meet the needs of a specific business, because there is no one size fits all in the market. Or if anybody tells you it's one size fits all, they're just wanting you to conform to their model. And this model was able to be extensible and really adaptive to the organizations. But as we did that, we kept finding it grew more and more data. And that data was really a gold mine, a lifeline for these businesses. And I found a lot of joy in being able to pull up reports and say, here's some stuff that's going on. Here's how your organization is pursuing these opportunities or sales or service or whatever we're working on, and delivering that value. And so that's been my area of fun for the last 21 years. So that's been, it's kind of a long answer. I don't know if exactly that was what you're asking, but I get excited about it. I just keep going.
That's perfectly fine. Well, in fact, with that, why don't we head into some more of the details on it? Christina, you want to run through the rules before we do that, though?
Yeah, no problem. So, rule number 1. Please preface any question you have with a Q. I already saw that in our chat going on, so thank you so much for doing that, guys. The goal here is that we can identify quickly any questions that might come up. Rule number 2, please do not repeat any questions. We will get to them, we promise. And if you spam the chat, we'll have to kick you out, and we don't want to do that. So please be respectful and follow these 2 rules. We'll be good to go.
Awesome. All right, Scott, let's not waste any more time. Let's head into your laptop and see what you got. Let's talk through this.
Oh, sure. Well, sure, I can jump right in. So just as a context of what I work on and what I talk about is really, in this case, I'm looking at Dynamics 365 CRM, the traditional sales model. But this is really just a Power App, first-party Power App that has happened to have the Dynamics, the CRM side in front of it. It could just as easily be a Power App that you built for something else, for another purpose. But you've got all this data that's being gathered and created, and people are entering things. It's accumulating over time. And again, this ability to bring a Power BI report into it and host it right there, to be able to see data, like you're seeing data here, where we see trending, month over month changes, and those types of things are a little harder to see in the out of the box Power Apps reporting. Other things we can look at is to using part of the Power Platform to say, let's look at things where we're saying opportunities being created. If we're connecting into marketing, we're looking at revenue over time and closing percentages. But really being able to see those percentages take place and then take action on it is really a nice strength of the way these two tools can work together. In this case, I just built a win-loss ratio for different users. So Claudia here, on average, closes about 46% of the opportunities she's working on, which is good, but probably could stand maybe some a few of these folks might actually benefit from some additional coaching to be able to help them do something. And the storyline is really simple, but the idea is we're looking at some metrics we're driving out of Dataverse and then summarizing them and then choosing from that a few that we want to take some action on. And we can use the embedded Power Automate tool to take that list of 6 or 7 users, pass them off to a Power Automate flow that could then, I don't know, send them a gift basket or enroll them in a sales training or send them a cat video, whatever you want to do that Power Automate's going to do. You just take action on this data that you have summarized right in front of you, so that you get that full scenario going on. It's just really a useful way of being able to see what's not just see what happened in the rearview mirror, but start steering as a result of what you see.
I love.
I know you've
this.
seen that in your work before.
To me, this says we're radically shortening the time from insight to action. And we can control the action as like, hey, these are the desired next steps that we've agreed upon and that we understand, like, okay, hey, when we see this, then we do that. And I like this a lot.
And you put a little bit of a human layer in front of it, because I might look at these lists and say, if I were just doing it as a blind automation and saying, okay, just get everybody below a certain percentage, fire off an email to them. But I might look and say, hey, Enrico and Camille actually just started last week. So I don't need to enroll them in sales training. They're already set in sales training, but I'm going to take some folks and say, and maybe somebody else I've got on a special project, so I don't need to actually include them, but I can selectively take the action and then, like I said, include the Power Automate trigger and fire off and get them involved in whatever that Power Automate does.
Nice.
Other things that I love about this integration is the ability to to go deeper into individual customers and say what's going on with this particular customer and the drill through to a customer detail, that type of thing. The trend analytics, being able to see what's happening over time, and then hopefully rolling it forward. And I'm doing all this with a low code, no code approach, to where I don't have to actually figure out and I am not a math guy, but I can roll this forward and say, what is this going to look like going forward, given the history, if that trending as well as seasonality fits into it. You can see that going forward, or what's the unusual things that are happening in this data. In this case, I can use that anomaly detection that's built into Power BI and say, all right, something weird happened on that day. We had a spike in sales, or we had a negative spike in sales. Whatever that was, well, it looks like a big group that came through for discount percentage equals 0, which is unusual, but or development, or it came in through wholesale as an industry. We can just see what's happening on those days, and then that can influence what we're doing. And then Chris, you got to know, key influencer is my baby. I love the key influencer. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time with it. It's so much fun because it gives you that chance to say, okay, you go into a basket of sales, and every sale has a lot of things that influence it. It can be the customer type, it can be the salesperson, it can be the product, it can be the territory, it can be the seasonality, could be any number of things that can drive or influence those sales over time. Now, I have a sales background, So if you ask me, and it was and the product and the sale was a win, it's always going to be because I did an amazing job. I'm always going to take credit, right? Right, fair enough.
Smart.
But if it didn't, right, and if I didn't win the sale, it was because the pricing was too high, or that there was product was wrong, or something like
Product
that.
team's
The
gotta be off
economy.
on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but this takes that emotion out of it and says, in reality, if we're looking at, let's say we're looking at mountain bikes, okay, we got a touring percentage. I can click in on the mountain bikes themselves and say, okay, what are the factors that are driving success for those mountain bikes? Well, we got the rating equals hot, which might actually be a trailing indicator, but we know that we're doing well in Virginia. Or if let's say the campaign type is other, or David Mallory happens to be the salesperson, those are driving success for us. But if we switch over and say, instead I want to look at the touring bikes, let me click on the touring bikes. It reruns all that regression analysis on the data only for the touring bikes. We find out that instead of Virginia, it's in Pas-de-Calais, I guess France, and then or Indiana, or if the owner is Veronica. Those are the things that are influencing the touring bikes to be successful. So getting that regression analysis in there, we've used this for some conversations with customers in the manufacturing, looking at safety and saying what is it that influences or is more likely to result in a safety violation for the day at a particular facility. And say, what are all the factors? Is it the number of times, the number of days since the last safety training, the type of equipment they're using, who the safety director is, which facility is? We could use all those factors and say, how do we adjust and how do we identify what's influencing a particular outcome? And use that to try to drive and improve the safety for the employees there. So it's really a cool factor where you can even grab multiple factors and say, all right, what's the magic combination of the manager and the purchase process and the rating and all those things together, and then what does that combination turn out to be? Because we've done that. I don't know if have you used the key influencer in your work?
So I'm a huge fan of the key influencer. I demo it and showcase it often. I'm not sure I've done an actual implementation with it where it survived a round of designs with the users. Christina, how about you?
I've had it in a couple where it survived. The bigger issue I've seen is people don't want to scroll through the fluff to get to something that they can action on, right? So I think sometimes the data that they have, it's a garbage in, garbage out scenario, where every now and again it's just not clean enough for these kind of things to run effectively. Right. But when it is, it's very powerful.
I totally empathize that this key influencer chews up data. It really loves data.
Yeah.
And when you're starting a project, you typically don't have enough data to really light it up. The first, when you're first doing it, unless you're bringing in data from an outside system or a legacy or data, and you've got enough there that can really light up the scenarios that you're working on. But once you've got some data flowing through the system, it can be really powerful to say, we'll take a bit of the emotion out and say, let's figure out what is it that's driving an outcome that we're trying to influence, whether the wins or whether it be what's influencing the status to be losses. I mean, if you want to take the negative perspective on it, you can rerun all that data and say, all right, well, sure enough, it's bottles and cages. That's it's not cages. That's the bike. This is the bike data set. So it's not like cages for animals.
We were a little
it's
worried,
like
Scott, about your make-believe
bottle
scenario here.
Yeah, so you put a little bottle in and drive that. Or if it's the mountain bike pedal or the full finger glove or whatever, that's just a way in which you can understand that. But it's a powerful conversation we get to have with our customers. And one of the things I try to do
that
is
combined with the decomposition tree are great for the embed in PowerPoint, so that more of a conversation around what's going on can be had, and you can use that as part of a story that you're telling senior leadership who are accustomed to looking at static snapshots, right? So I see the key influencers as like something analysts use to hone in on something that they then show to executives.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the decomp tree is beautiful in being able to take an area and just allow me to expand off into different ways in which things are happening and understand that data from their perspective, especially again with the dynamics and the CRM and F&O perspective. You're dealing with a lot of data that I'd say kind of looks the same when you're looking at a big view of, a big table of stuff, and being able to say, I want to explore this, especially putting this in your hands of a manager that says, I know there's questions I want to ask about that data, but I'm not sure what questions I want to ask at first. But as soon as they start seeing the data and kind of clicking around, the curiosity kicks in and they start exploring what's going on and saying, oh, you know what, I can draw some understanding from what's going on. I want to look at purchase processes as an individual and who are the managers that are putting those in place. Just trying to figure out what are those answers or what are those questions, and then being able to use a field slicer where you check out. I want to look at by number of opportunities created, or the volume of revenue won, or actually looking forward at looking what's in our pipeline. Where's our data in our pipeline coming from? That gives us a really nice ability to really empower our end users, which is what we want to do, right? I just love this ability to do that. And so a lot of times what I've seen has been, it's tough. I know if you said, Scott, you got to sit down, you got to decide what your dashboard is going to look like for the next 6 months, but you don't really have the data and you don't really have a chance to see whether it's going to look right or not. And if I were to force myself to write it on paper and say, hand it over to you, Chris, and say, Chris, build this for me, you would probably build it perfectly according to what I asked for. But as soon as I got it back, I would go, that's not exactly that's what I asked for. Yes, but it's not exactly what I need. Now that I see that, and I started asking questions of it, and these tools like natural Q&A and the decomp and the other tools, the way that Power BI really can get in front of a customer and help them unlock that, and not be forced into, you have to predefine what you want. And then if you come back and say, I want something else, I will go fine, but it's going to be another 6 months before you get that. That's one of the real cool things that I've loved about being in this space and being able to understand that and go for it. We just want to say by territory.
Well, and I think that's also like some of the personalization features make a ton of sense. And I love this in context with dynamics, because to me, I mean, I can talk about data all the time. I think one of the challenge is when we're talking about data is how do we do so in the context of a business need that solves a business problem and that can be used by the business in a place where they work and operate, and embedding this report inside of Dynamics. I think it makes tons of sense. Especially if it's integrated with Dynamics data, and we're starting to make it leverageable there.
Let's take it another level deep. Let's go another level deeper.
Sure.
And so in this case, I totally agree with what you're saying, because we can then go another step forward with this and say, okay, I'm going to look at an individual customer. Like I'm going to look at budget toys here. I can open up budget toys, and every record in Dynamics or this Power Platform has a GUID associated with it. And I can pass that GUID to a report that's sitting inside that form. And by passing it in, I can filter the report according to the record I'm on. So now I'm on the budget toy story. I keep saying Toy Story. I mean, Toy Store. My nephew has influenced me for Toy Story. So,
It's a good
but it's
influence.
the budget toy store, and and I can look in the budget toy store and see a report that's baked into it to say what is the revenue for this organization, and then even all the organizations are customers that roll up into this particular. If I'm looking at it from a hierarchy perspective, I can go all the way up and say, what's going on for these other organizations and how do they contribute to the bottom line, even if they're multiple layers deep. And then going from there and jump over to that specific customer and ask the same question of that individual customer and say, what's going on here? You're contributing a lot to my bottom line. Let me know more about what's happening for the aerobic exercise company in Camarillo, wherever that is, Melbourne, or California. So that context, like you said, Chris, it's just amazing to get in and understand what's going on with the customer at different levels. So I'm pretty excited about that, as you can probably tell.
When I think
Oh,
you bring up a great point, Scott. Like when I make reports for people, it is typically like, all right, what do you want? And they might not know. So even having
Yeah.
those kind of features in a V1 is going to make all the difference, making sure whatever happens in V2 is actually going to be useful. But I love that idea.
Because,
I've implemented it a couple of times, but it never at like scale, which I think would be useful. Having a QA page like you have in there is pretty genius.
yeah, and it's also interesting because the more you can engage those decision makers on your project, the more they find that they can have value in it and not be frustrated to ask additional questions, that they can find it as a natural part of what they're working on. They can go ask another question, and then that triggers a neuron that fires and says, oh, what about this other
Yeah.
thing? Let me go ask about that. And if they can explore it, they get more value out of it. And then suddenly they become your champion on a project, and they are data fans, and they love what you're doing because you're actually delivering value to them, and reducing the friction entirely to make it
Yeah.
available to them. So that's been a part of my journey this whole time, as to how do you make it available to quote unquote normal people.
hey,
Well, the
so
people
a
who would
couple
actually use
questions.
it, right?
Yeah, the people that use it, as you say. Um, Donald has a question. He wants to know: is this a built-in report, or is this something that is you built yourself?
Yeah, so this is a report that I built, and basically I take the report and add it to the configuration of the Power App, in this case Dynamics, and just tell it what do I want to pass from the record that I'm on to this record that's I don't necessarily want to call it an iframe, but think of it
Mm.
equivalent of an iframe, that you're passing it into this report. And this report is sitting this embedded report is sitting on a Power BI server,
Okay.
or in the Power BI service. And when I call that report, I pass it a GUID, basically, when I'm passing, and say, I want you to filter this embedded report according to this GUID, this account record. And it could be the account ID, it could be an account number, it could be a phone number, whatever it happens to be that aligns with the data set, and you can pull off the record that you're coming from.
No, and I think that makes sense, and that actually leads right into Fernando's question here, which is, how'd you actually build this report? Was it in the Power BI service? Is this an integrated Dynamics Fabric thing? How what did you do here?
I I started like everything. I started in the Power BI desktop for me.
Okay.
I'm old school. I started the desktop. I built it in the desktop. I built up the model, the data set that we have. Like this is the same report, the model that we have, and I just keep it really simple and clean. And so that I've got the pieces that I'm connecting from here and there. At the end of the day, though, I do have one. Let's see. There's my customer, and there is an ID an account ID record that's in there. I think I've got it hidden, but that becomes a filter as soon as I filter that customer measure or that customer dimension. everything else in the report filters accordingly. And that's where my customer detail report shows up. So in this case, it's not filtered, but I could filter this to, let's see, I'll filter the page to a particular customer. Oops. Yeah. So I'll filter it to a particular customer. So that's a bike store in Seattle. And basically that's what I pass in, as I pass in a value and the report filters. And I just show that one page to the user embedded in that account record. And I could do it for, in this case, I've got it in the account record. I could do it on, I've also done it, I think, on the salespeople, where I can say, all right, so I'm going to have a coaching session with this individual. I don't know if I have data lit up in here or not, but let me look. But I'm going to have a coaching session with David Mallory. And so I can go to that page, and hopefully if I have data lit up in here, it would actually show me a report of what's David working on, what's his closing percentage, what has he got in his pipeline, all that information, and how do I understand more about how do I help coach David to be successful? If I'm David's manager, I can see what David's working on. And if the two of us are working together, I can say, you know what, my goodness, David, you've got this monster opportunity out here for Swift Cycles, right? So we got a $146,000 opportunity out here. It's in the qualify stage, and the estimated close date is later this week. Well, David, let's sit down and talk about what you're dealing with, what you got here, because I don't want to put it in my forecast if it's not a done deal. But if you've got a deal on the line, let's go work together and make sure that happens. So I can just click on it, and it will take me to the Swift Cycle opportunity, and we can work together to say, how do we turn this into an action? How do we turn this into into success for you and for me and for our organization?
I mean, this is just fantastic. Now, when you're doing this embedding, this comes from another question Fernando's asking. It's like, did you just have a blank canvas or page in D365 to embed? How did you do this?
Very well, I think. Thank you for asking. Just kidding. No, so
I have to agree with you there.
Yeah, so the embedding is actually really pretty simple. In this case, I'll show you what it looks like behind the scenes. I don't really have one set up, but I'll show you what it looks like. I can go to my analytics solution. And again, if you're not familiar with the Power App side of things, this is just the configuration for that front end. This is where we go to lay out new tables and forms, etc. And I can go to the account entity or table. And that's not just a SQL table. That's not just data. It's also includes in the metadata about what do the forms look like. And I can go to that sales analytics form that we just saw. So this is my form. I'll go to that form and we'll show you what it looks like. So here's my form. And on the front page, you'll see a big, it'll take it a second to wake up here, but we'll see the fields over on the left. Let's see. Yeah. So these are the fields that just come out of the record itself. That's just normal record itself. And right in the middle, we'll see a component that's a blank component, but it's actually a report. I don't know if you can see that over on the right. It's Power BI report, and I can click edit, and I can tell it this is the report that move that out of the way. This is the report I'm pointing to, and then down below at the bottom, I pass in a little bit of JSON filter string that tells me what value I'm pulling from the record and which table and field name I want to use to filter that in the data set, in my Power BI data set. Well, not data set. What is it? Semantic model, right?
Model.
Semantic layer.
We all knew what you
I gotta get my terminology up to date.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So I've got to pass that over to that semantic thingy and filter it accordingly. And that ultimately filters my report to show off the values that I'm looking for. So it's really, honestly, it's pretty easy. I got a video up there that I did about a year ago. It kind of walks you through that process. And it's got a copy of the JSON that you can sort of sub in what you want. to put in that list. But that becomes the values that are there. And at the end of the day, I'm building the report to consume that data in Fabric by just writing queries against it to bring it into my model and make it easy to consume.
Oh, this is awesome. But okay, so we've gone
Which
through.
kind of takes me to the Fabric end of things. I'll probably.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was about to go. Like,
Sorry,
let's talk about how we can get. So we've gone Power BI into Dynamics, but how do we get the Dynamics into the Power BI?
Yeah, two great. It's like a Reese's cut. Two great things that go great together. Dynamics and Fabric are beautiful together because I mean, you think about it from a if I come from a Dynamics perspective, background in a long time, and this has been a software as a service for years, for 10 years, I guess, and it's been this platform where people are fine with they go on, they sign up, they become a user of it. They don't care where the server is sitting, or they don't care to which patch version they're, whether Windows has been patched or not, or whether SQL has been updated to the latest security patch. It's all taken care of by Microsoft in that case. That's been the experience for the Dynamics and Power Apps community for a long time. Now with the introduction of Fabric, before Fabric, I had some ways that I could get data from Dataverse or from this Dataverse platform that sits underneath Power Apps and all this, bringing it to Power BI. But it was kind of like you're draining the ocean through a drinking straw sometimes. It felt like that. You really had to really be refined to get a good query that would pull it through the available channels into Power BI. And if you went to if you needed really large data sets in the hundreds of millions of records, at that point, you really kind of needed to go with a Synapse link approach, where you take the data out of Dynamics and you put it in Synapse, or you copy it out to Synapse, to Azure Storage, and put Synapse in front of it. And it was slow, but it could handle massive volumes. Well, but then again, my friends on the Dataverse side are used to, let me just use the software. I don't want to spend time spinning up all these different applications and try to get everything working together. Just let me I just want my data. Give me my data in an easy way to consume it. That's where Fabric has now jumped into the team. And we have this ability to create shortcuts from Dataverse, this platform that sits underneath Dynamics and Power Apps and others. We have an ability to create shortcuts from that data to Fabric with a low code, no code approach, and allow it to copy the data without having to set up a replication over to Fabric.
Wait,
we just create shortcuts. Really, actually pretty easy to do.
You gotta be kidding. I don't have to replicate the stuff over. I could just use it in place with a shortcut.
You set it and forget it, buddy.
Gosh.
You kick it off. Let me show you. I've got an environment that I kicked up here just a minute ago, just to make sure that I had something I could show it to you with. And in this case, I've got the Synapse link. By the way, please don't shoot the messenger on the naming of things. We're going to call it Synapse. The naming is not clear, but we're going to work with it with the Fabric side of this. This is the Synapse link that we had in the past to be able to move it out to Azure Synapse. But we have this new feature that allows us to set up a version directly from Dataverse into Fabric. And instead of going here and clicking new link, I'm going to go up to tables. All right. Again, don't shoot the messenger. We're going to go to tables here. And when we see the table list come up, this was introduced along with Fabric in the fall. And up at the top of the list of tables, I have an Analyze button. And I can choose to take it directly into Power BI. I can create a simple report that way. Again, not a great volume story, but it is there. I could go to the Synapse version, which we have to set up an infrastructure for that. Or I can go link to Fabric, and I'll show you what that involves. It's pretty simple. I'll click link to Fabric here, and it gives me a wizard to start with. So I'm on a good path here. If we get a wizard, we're in good shape. at the first thing it does is starts me with, it checks to see if I have a Fabric capacity. Everybody's watching this live today. The Fabric capacity has to be in the same Azure region as your as Dataverse. That's today. Later this month, I'm not sure exactly the right date, but it will be relaxed. And so the Dataverse and Fabric can be in the same geography. So it could be US East and US West. It can't be US and Australia, right? They have to be in the same geography. But as long as they're in the same geography, they don't have to actually be in the same Azure region. They can still talk to each other. Anyway, that's changing as of this month. But once I get this far, I click, save the connection, and it's going to set up a link that allows me to connect from Fabric back to Dataverse. And in this case, now I go next, and I'm going to tell it which Fabric workspace I want to put this information in. So I'll choose the Fabric workspace. I can create a new one, or I can use one of the ones that I already have. I'm going to use one that I already have, Fabric link, and then click next. And from this point
Scott,
forward,
that has been such an awful pain in the neck thing. You have to be in the exact same region as your Dynamics, because nobody paid attention when they spun up Dynamics 5 years ago as to what region they were in.
No.
And that was awful.
So now we've got it's simplified. I can click create, and it's going to start the process of creating a lake house. And what it's going to do is it's going to go over to Fabric and create a lake house. And in the lake house, it's going to create shortcuts that point back to Dataverse. Simultaneously, it's creating a Delta Parquet Delta Lake inside the Dataverse region and hydrating that with Dataverse data. So,
that's fantastic.
I'm setting up and kicking it off right here. It's going to take, this is a process you kick off and go get some lunch, or depending on how much data you have, you might go for a nice dinner, maybe breakfast, whatever. It's going to take a little time to hydrate that thing. And it runs on an hourly basis and keeps that data up to date. Keeps that Delta Lake up to date. And then that Delta Lake is actually the source that Power BI, Fabric can talk to. Over here, let me look at an example here. In this case, sorry for the extra clicks, but so this is an example where I've already got one connected to a workspace in Fabric, and it creates for me automatically, I don't have to do anything, this lake house, and inside the lake house, it's creating a SQL Analytics endpoint. And that SQL Analytics endpoint is that's my key to the kingdom. I write my SQL queries. I ask for the data out of that. Boom. I'm on my way with that data. I can create views in here, which I love to do. I love to create a view in order to be able to see that data. So if I clicked into it, let me jump into it. Yeah. So it went blank there for a second, because in the process of creating the other one, it's actually spinning up the lake house for the new environment that I just spun up. But now I've got my accounts in my table, and I can also some views that I've created, etc. So it's just a really nice way of being able to get that data and be able to take advantage of it from there. At that point, I'll show you my Power BI report. Now,
well, hang on one second. We've got a question
on the desktop.
Guillermo
is transform
asking,
data. Yeah.
Ooh, sorry. Guillermo is asking, are the Dataverse Delta files stored in Dataverse storage or in Fabric storage?
They're stored in database storage.
Okay.
And it's stored there because Dataverse takes care of the art job that creates that. So that's really what it's storing it in the Dataverse database storage, but it's also included in that, and not just storage. storage is also the Spark job that runs that. And so you don't have to pay for any of that. It just is storage. The interesting thing that I've found has been there's a ton of people that have Dataverse environments where they have a lot of slack capacity. They've got a lot of extra database capacity. They bought 1,000 users, right? And 1,000 users, they're not all day long. They're just there to consume it and, close out work orders or whatever that they already have permissions to or have privileges for. Sorry, it's losing. Hopefully I'm still with you guys.
Yeah, we were having some kind of
case,
ins and outs here, so apologies to everyone. I think Scott's coming back. Hang on.
Yeah, hopefully
his volume pick up again.
I'm not sure exactly where I was, but the nice thing is,
so we were talking about excess storage is what you're saying, correct?
Yeah. So a lot of customers already have that excess storage. So spinning up this lake house doesn't cost them a penny. They already have permission to have that. They already have entitled storage that they don't need to deal. They don't have to buy anything or do anything. They just take advantage of what they've already got.
And Scott, Fernando has another question. What's the benefit of doing this shortcut into Fabric and then putting Power BI on top of that versus using the existing Dataverse APIs or the existing Power BI Dataverse integrations that are out there? Why would you go one way or the other?
Yeah, number one is one way, the out of the box connector, if you wanted to use that, is using the TDS endpoint into Dataverse. It has some tremendous opportunities or tremendous use cases for that. The upside of it, is it's simple. You write a SQL query and you're done, right? Simple. The other upside of it is it inherits CRM security so that you can create a report. If it's a direct query report, if Christina, myself, and Chris, you've got, we're all three on a team, and permission-wise, Chris, you and I are we're both salespeople, and we work for Christina, and we say, you know what, we're allowed to see our own report, our own data. Chris, you can see yours, and I can see mine, but we can't see each other's. But Christina, she can see hers and ours because we work for her, right?
Yeah.
So we can,
and I'm
it'll
watching
inherit
both of you.
that permission. What's that?
I'm joking. I said, and I'm watching both of you.
Yeah, eyes all right. Right. So the nice thing is it inherits those permissions and it shows it off.
that's
It's
awesome.
really nice to do that. Downside, there's no free lunch here. Downside is volume wise, that is not a volume capable connector. It will time out after 5 minutes if you're trying to pull a large query.
Okay.
It will. It is not a fast way to retrieve that data. It is pulling the live data and it's pulling it through all the mechanisms of the Power Up platform. And so it's pulling it through the security sieve and pulling it through some API layers. So you're not reading it like pulling it off the metal of the SQL server. You're pulling it through this application layer. And so it's inherently going to be slow. But that you're kind of gaining some benefits, but you're losing the speed. The alternative, the complementary version of that, I wouldn't say that an organization likely will use both approaches. Given enough, if you have enough data, you're likely to use both approaches. And the approach with going through Fabric says, give me all the data fast. Give me massive amounts. And it works beautifully for that. You're pulling it right off those Delta Lake files. And so if you're dealing with large amounts of data, Fabric is a Fabric really unlocks those, being able to see, like we looked at the key influencer and trend analytics and those kind of things over massive amounts of time. I've got reports that I'm pulling 8 million support cases through, and Fabric just goes, that's cute, Scott. That's not a lot of data, but come on. So I'm pulling a bunch of data that would just absolutely crush the TDS endpoint.
Sure.
That's good.
Hey, Fernando has a follow-up question. Do we have to worry about configuring an incremental refresh or maybe a append mode to the syncing? Like, how do I make sure? How does it keep it to date? Is it doing full flushes every X amount of days, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's magic. It works beautifully. It actually does a incremental update automatically, and you don't have to do anything to set that up. So it is setting up an incremental update to update that data set or the Delta Lake that's there. And the shortcut always has visibility into whatever whatever the current state of that Delta Lake is. As far as when you pull it into Power BI, if you wanted to run direct lake or direct query against that, you're welcome to do that. If you wanted to do an import into Power BI to try to improve kind of the clicky responsiveness of Power BI, then you would set up whatever iteration you wanted to do in terms of pulling that into import mode in Power BI. But that's kind of the way it's always been with Power BI. However you choose to do that. But as far as getting the Delta Lake set up and running, it is really literally those clicks that I showed you going through this process.
Nice.
And once you've gone through that process, it sets up this Microsoft One Lake, which is the Delta Lake that sits and makes it available to you from that point forward. So we'll go back to the Synapse there. And now you'll notice that before I had a new wizard here, but now I've got this Microsoft One Lake link. And that Microsoft One Lake is the version where the data sits inside of Dataverse or inside of the Dataverse security zone. And it's in a Delta Lake there. And then if I go over to Fabric, I just have shortcuts back to it from that point forward.
Nice.
So like in this case.
Oh, that is fantastic now.
Yeah, it works out beautifully. And by the way, I do want to kind of make sure that I don't let that slip by and describe that. We are looking at shortcuts to the data, not copies of it. So we're not moving data. No, we're not lifting, shifting, move data into Fabric. We're not making another copy of it over into Fabric. The data is still sitting inside of Dataverse. And so we're pointing back to that. So the data actually, I had a customer the other day that was building this up, and they were concerned about Fabric capacity usage and Fabric storage and all this. Once they got through the process of doing it, they found out that their experience with their data was the Fabric consumption was nickels, because all the work is being done on Dataverse side, and all the storage is over in the Dataverse side. The Fabric, all that you're doing capacity wise is creating some shortcuts, and then whatever you run across it, like if you want to refresh a Power BI report or start an integration work in there, that's the only thing you're paying for on the Fabric side.
A follow-on question.
Yeah.
How do you handle schema drift here?
Yeah, the schema.
You add a new column or something along those.
Yeah, great question. So what's happening is as the schema does change, because that's what schemas do, it will update the lake. The lake does get those new schemas in place. It takes care of moving that data in there. At some point, you will probably want to click this refresh Fabric tables. And what that's doing is it updates Fabric to say, by the way, there is new metadata about this table. Why don't you update your shortcut so that you know that there's new columns there?
Okay.
So it's really
because you're not copying data anyplace, we don't have to worry about rehydration. It's just resetting my schema for what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Wow. That is awesome.
So it updates that thing. Now, again, this runs on an hourly basis. It's
Okay.
it's refreshed an hourly.
Okay.
So there may be a time where a change happens and you might need to give it an hour or so before that change kind of percolates through the whole process.
Can you force it any faster?
No.
Chris.
But thanks for asking.
Chris is like, I want it every 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Now.
I like the data before it's entered. Please
Yeah.
get it.
Yes.
Please get it that fast.
I believe
It's
Copilot's
telepathically.
working on that. You know.
Yeah, predictive data entry. So yeah, so,
Predictive data
it is
entry and pre-crime. That's right on the whole.
precognition kind of thing.
I think
But
there's
yeah,
a movie about that or two. Yeah.
next version. Yeah, it's the next version.
Yeah.
It is taking place on that process and kicking it, moving it over. So it's a pretty exciting process. I did want to kind of, if you don't mind, let me show you.
Yeah.
Because what's a Microsoft person to do if we don't show some PowerPoint at some point? Let me show you and
Let's be fair. We started with demos, and now we're going to like a little PowerPoint. It's a great break from the norm. So
upside down, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so this is my animation that I did, and you're gonna not that part, but the other part. So this is Dataverse Fabric, the Dataverse world. These biz apps are on the left hand side. That is where this data is coming from. Could be finance and operation, or supply chain, or field service, or customer service, or sales, etc. And it comes over and moves there. And like I mentioned earlier, there is that TDS endpoint. That is the SQL connection back to Dataverse. That works for Power Apps, for sales, customer service, field service, but it does not work for supply chain or finance or marketing. So it does have some limitations. It's there for the Dataverse end of it. But what we've added to it, what we've been talking about, is this idea of, in the past, we had the Synapse storage where we moved data out into Synapse and connected it to Fabric or Power BI. Now we have this Dataverse Fabric link version where it kind of stays inside of Dataverse and then is available to me in Fabric or Power BI. But at the end of the day, you can use all three of those if you wanted to. Kind of with this, the top one and the bottom would kind of be redundant to each other, but it's there. Let me show you what it looks like when we bring the data in, or my perspective on being able to try to help communicate. And maybe this is helpful as you're communicating with your customers. The idea is we got data over here in Dataverse. It's in a database. And the TDS way is us pulling it from the database directly through the app layer into Power BI. That's what we've had for a long time. What we can do, and by the way, behind the scenes, Dataverse is not just a single database. It's blob storage, log storage, and now we also have this Delta Parquet storage that has actually been there already, but now we're able to take advantage of it with Fabric or with Synapse Link. We could pull it out and send it through Synapse into a Delta Parquet and bring it up to Lakehouse. Or what I think is beautiful is this idea of the database and Delta Parquet, and I can bring it straight into the Lakehouse as a shortcut and be able to consume it from that perspective. What that also is, and I know, Chris, you worked in some enterprises that this would have been useful, is I can have both environments working together.
This would have been very useful, Scott.
I can have both in there. I can also have multiple workspaces, different workspaces. One workspace may be directed to just sales, and I can create a shortcut back to the Delta Parquet for just the sales table. Another one's just customer service, and I create a Lakehouse just for that. I'm using the same links and the same Delta Parquet. I just maybe tighten it up and say, okay, I'm only giving you, I'm not going to clutter your workspace with all the other things that are out there. I'm just going to give you the stuff that's relevant to what you're working on. As well as, I don't know if I have a picture of this. Yeah, I do have a picture of that. Oh, yes. I can now have, like if I had a European environment and a US environment, and they work independently of each other in Dataverse, I can combine that data into a single Lakehouse and just with a SQL query, union that together and deliver analytics across multiple Dataverse environments at the same time.
Wow.
That was a pain before.
Yeah. How so how does this separate out? Table name, schema name.
Yeah. So as you
Tell me
create
more,
multiple
please.
shortcuts, as you create, you in this case, you're going to be like going into Fabric and creating shortcuts. And when you create them, you can append to the table name, or eventually you'll be able to add schemas to it. But you can append to the table name. This is accounts underscore EMEA, accounts underscore US, or whatever, Americas. You can append that name to the table, to the name of the tables, the shortcut. We're calling it, really, it's what we're change the name of. And each one of those is pointing back to a different environment.
That's fan-freaking-tastic.
Isn't it amazing? I
That
love it.
is
What
amazing.
times we live in, man. What amazing times we live in these days. Flying cars are next, but yeah, we build this out, and in this case, let me open up a different environment here. You're pulling it in, and but it's cool stuff. It's cool beans, man. Like, here's my account, my sales table. Actually, let me go back to the lake house instead. Yeah, we can pull it all together from here. All that said, amazing opportunities here to pull this together. The other thing that Fabric gives you is all that the data manipulation side. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out the incredible power of the data integration side, pipelines, data flows, all the pieces there that go in addition to just the reporting side, that you can take that data and then work on it, combine it with other data, push it back into Dynamics or into Dataverse with the data integration tools that we have. Data Activator, where we can say, let's watch when something is happening and take action on it. Like, if we're looking at when our plant, when if the plant's temperature goes above 80 degrees 3 times in a week, then we want to call out and send out a repair guy for that. Or if we do something and we see a month over month increase for 3 months running, we might want to go take action on that. That kind of data activator is a really an interesting enhancement to this process. So
that is fantastic. I'm thinking also that also indicates that any tool that can read a Delta file could then read this shortcut through OneDrive and take advantage of that. Or OneLake, yes. So if I am a Dynamics house and I use Power BI for my front end, but I've got a huge presence, with Databricks, either Azure or AWS or wherever, right? I could just use those files where they are as part of the ecosystem, and it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Really powerful
This is
stuff.
Amazing.
I love it.
All right, Scott, we've run a little long, but I want to give you the last words here. If there's a call to action of like, hey, could you, or what should people do next in this space, what would you say?
Just jump in feet first. Jump in feet first. If you want some background on some of these pieces, I've got some videos up there. You're welcome to grab those. I throw stuff up there as I think about it.
Awesome.
I'm not the video god that you are, but I just throw stuff up occasionally and see what I can do to help out with people.
And Scott,
love to hear what people's successes
Scott's
are.
got a number of great videos out there. Christina and Sheila posted links up above, so do check those out. If you have ideas for Scott, ideas.fabric.microsoft.com would be really great. Is there any special tags you like out, Scott?
I'm like Beetlejuice. Just say the word Dataverse 3 times in a row, and I show up.
Oh my god, that would be incredible. Awesome.
It's a little awkward at times, but you know.
It's a lot of work.
You don't even need a flying car then, Scott, if you have teleportation, you know.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, Scott, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thank everyone for Christina. Thank you for being here and helping out. And
I mean, getting the opportunity to learn this right from Scott, unparalleled. So this is awesome. Thank you.
right, we'll send a bill next week. So, well, and thank you guys for tuning in and joining us. We'll be here. You know, we're trying to do something every week. We're doing pretty good. We've been doing this for over a year now. A little bad news, good news. I don't know. I'm actually going to be presenting to some CIOs and stuff on Friday. So
Ooh.
no Fabric Friday this week. And next Wednesday, I'm going to be traveling for a client who's going to be implementing Fabric. So we have a huge kickoff for a big project with Fabric. So super excited about that. But that means no live stream. So
It's not allowed, Chris.
apologies there. And Powell, if you're watching, I'll connect with you about a new date and time for that one. So awesome. Thanks, everybody. You guys have great days. Peace. Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.